makes us more real somehow. As the sun lowered itself, I began to think more about matters at hand, and maybe Akubi could help me. Maybe he could figure it out. And I said to him, I said, do you know anything about the Kingdom of Nod? And all that I got was just more flashes and memories of biblical passages, and I saw Cain kill Abel on the screen. Nothing I didn't already know. I thought to myself, well, you know, because he only had memories that I had. So I said, how am I gonna find out where I'm supposed to go here, Akubi? How am I supposed to do that? But then the screen changed. The minute I asked that, the screen changed, and I was watching news reports, and there was sound. It came over the crackled speakers too, and it was a news report from years ago that I must have seen. It got lost somewhere in my subconscious mind, but it was a news report about how the media, during the listener's license, when the listener's license came into being, of course, they had to crack down on all recorded media. And you can't create a crackdown like that when all broadcast media and recording media is regulated. You can't crack down like that without there being a severe backlash, and people would fight back. And what wound up happening was there were these ham radio and pirate radio broadcasters, mostly ham radio and shortwave, who went out into the desert, into remote locations, and they set up broadcast stations where they would broadcast for free. So everyone went out and bought shortwave radios so they could have unfiltered knowledge, and they had it there. And they would broadcast this knowledge all over the world. Anything they wanted to say. They'd broadcast music, unregulated art. They'd broadcast books. Of course, this was all highly, highly illegal, but there was a number of them that happened. And they all kept their locations secret. Some of them, in the early days, could broadcast 24 hours, but eventually, as the crackdown came, the corporations wound up sending out the police. There's nothing more than a hired muscle, really. Shut them down. They began to broadcast at irregular times. And rumors were circulated through the web and through encrypted knowledge. People would, let them know when the broadcast was going to happen, and then the way they'd track them, they'd have mirrors on different antennas, and they'd set up. It was really quite an ordeal. But the news report was about that. It was all about this, these terrorists who were taking over the airwaves without licensing, of course, they found the most extreme versions of that. Whenever they want to shut something down that's free, they always find the most extreme versions. They find the white supremacists, or the people who cater to child pornography or things like that. They never talk about the people who are giving real news or information or teaching people or reading out, William Shakespeare over the airwaves. They never look at those guys. No, they always look to find the most sensational, horrible thing they can. And that's what this news report was. And it hit me like a wave of knowledge. The beauty of the bod of it. And I realized, I said, why am I... There must be a spike out here. Spikes were what they called, it's a slang term for after after all the broadcasting media became illegal. They called them spikes. Antennas. Huge radio station antennas that they'd build out of, they'd buy the antenna packs and they'd build them out here, and they'd have like a spike base 1, spike base 2, that kind of a thing. So these guys would go to here and build a spike. There must be a spike nearby, otherwise why would Ikubi tell me that? And I realized that if I was to try to look for one, how would I find it? And everyone who's ever thrown signal knows that there's more, like radio waves are easier to travel at night than it is during the day. So I realized that at night, once the sun set, I might be able to pick up on the signal. I might be able to find one of these spikes if there's something that might still be broadcasting, some sort of remote signal or even anything, something I could catch up on. As I sat there, the thoughts I was thinking about finding a spike, about discovering where one could be, like flashed through Akubi's screen. And I could see why he came. This was my higher mind, I guess is what they'd say in some New Age circles. He came out to the desert to help me. So we sat. And as I began to think and consider this, his screen turned back to static. But it wasn't black and white static normally. It was like red and yellow and white and darker colors, and it was the color of fire. If you can imagine fire as static. And that's what was flashing on my face. It's like having a fire out there as the sun set. When the sun sets, there's less interference in the atmosphere. It has to do with the solar layers or layers of signal, so that the signal would go more. So I figured that if I was going to try to make this, if I was going to try to find one of these spikes, I should probably get on top of the plane, get myself in an area, and get as high as I can so I could probably pick up the signal. I looked up and Nakubi was gone, just like that. Poof, he was vanished. Well, he was never really there to start with. But I guess since I had a plan, since I knew what I was doing, he wasn't really needed anymore, so he just kind of dissolved. I didn't see him go, it was just, I became aware he was gone. So I got up out of the chair, and with a quick hop, thanks to my legs, I was able to land on top of the burned out hulk of the Hercules. And I crawled up on the tip of the wing. The claws bit deep into the decaying remnants of the metal. I got to the highest point I could, which was just on the edge of the busted wing. I was worried about the weight, but it seemed to hold okay. So I hooked on and looked out across the desert as the sun set. And the noise and the traffic was there. Got a little louder, but gradually I tried to focus on the sound. I tried to focus on the one thing I could hear, so that I could kind of like it. I don't even know what I was listening for. I was listening for a signal that came from one of these spikes. So it's like trying to hear a friend's voice that you don't know in a crowd full of people who are talking. Very, very difficult to do. Very, very difficult. As I strained, it became quiet. I forced my mind to filter out the other radio waves. I forced myself to try to open myself up to hear a radio signal, maybe some transponder noise from one of these spikes. It got dark, really dark. There was no moon. And I could see floating through like the northern lights in the atmosphere, the radio traffic. Some had picked up and was streaking so high above me, you had to focus to see it. And it was like comets flying back and forth. Knowledge, information, these burning bright lights in the darkness of the sky. And then, from not too far away, I heard this chirp, and there was a flash of light. And it was a radio signal. It was a transponder signal, some noise put out. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but it was something that was coming from a spike. That's why, I guess I must have heard it during the day, because that's why Akubi knew about it. And it was coming from a direction. It flew out like this fairy, like a pixie. It drifted out and it came straight to me and flew around me like you'd imagine a moth would move. So as quick as I could, I jumped down off the Herc and I grabbed my helmet, made sure I had all my stuff, and I headed out chasing after it. And as fast as my mechanical legs could pump, that's how fast the little bright light would bury in front of me and go. It just kind of swerved back and forth. And as I ran, it got a little brighter. So I could tell that I must be getting closer to the signal. I must be, in fact, getting stronger. And it felt exhilarating. I was like a bloodhound on radio noise. I was following this signal, this electronic data that was floating about me, and all because of that Dreadman hardware that he put in my head. And for the first time, I felt like Mr. Weaver had actually done me a favor by giving me this.